Hey everybody. So today I am driving the Lamborghini Huracan Sterrato. This is the last edition of the Huracan, which has been Lamborghini's mainstream super sports car for the past decade or so, since about 2013. This is the final edition. Recently, Lamborghini announced the replacement for the Huracan, which is called the Temerario. It's going to be similarly sized car, but it's losing the V10 engine in place of a twin turbo V8 with a hybrid system. But for this last run, Lamborghini decided to do something a little different. Several years back, they showed a concept of the Huracan that they called the Sterrato, which was an off-road version. And this is the production edition that launched last year in 2023. They built 1,499 of these. I think they're probably all sold out at this point. But let's take a look at the Huracan Sterrato. So the Sterrato, as I said, is an off-road variant, so to speak, of the Huracan. This is got the same basic bodywork as other Huracans, but it's been lifted about 44 millimeters. So it's got a revised suspension system. It's got so that's about 1.7 inch lift. It's got 5.7 inches of ground clearance. It's got some extra lights on the front here, wheel arch extensions to give it sort of a rally look, because the track has also been extended about 1 inch. And as you might notice, it's running on some different tires than you would typically find on a Huracan. These are all equipped with Bridgestone Dueler all-terrain tires. They're a 19-inch with 235 40 19s on the front, and I think 285s on the rear, which means that it's got quite a bit more tire sidewall than a typical Lamborghini, or certainly than a typical Lamborghini sports car. Carbon ceramic brakes, and some other bodywork modifications, including this top-mounted air intake for the engine, so a snorkel air intake for the engine, I guess to keep some of the dust out when you're running off-road. Of course, it's also the only Huracan with a roof rack, so you can mount some of your gear up here, put your bike up here if you wanted to, or your skis, your snowboard. Be great to take this thing on a weekend ski trip, although you'd have to pack very lightly, or buy what you need when you get there, because if you can afford a car like this, you can probably afford to buy whatever you need when you get there. The Huracan actually has a surprising amount of storage space in the front here. There's a decent sized trunk here that'll carry a couple of duffel bags for you and your companion for a long weekend. And then in the back, there is no storage, because in the back, you've got a 5.2 liter V10 engine, a couple of very large intake plenums on the top there. The V10 is actually buried down somewhere underneath, with the air intake, that snorkel air intake, feeding down into air cleaners for each side, and then feeding into twin throttle bodies for the engine. And then back here, underneath here is the exhaust system and a 7-speed dual clutch transmission. And of course, you've got a plaque here showing the firing order for the 10 cylinders, in case you ever need to do any work on that. All right. The cabin of the Huracan is actually surprisingly roomy, but also fairly simple, clean, not too cluttered. Got digital instrument cluster up here, the steering wheel. Most of the interior of the Sterrato is covered in this microfiber or Alcantara or suede. Not quite sure exactly which material they're using, but the seats are carbon fiber shells, fairly simple seats, minimal adjustments. Got this big lever in the front here to move the seat fore aft, big knob on the side here to adjust the seat back angle. Got built-in airbags there, and then another lever here to adjust the seat height, and that's it. No other fancy adjustments, no lumbar adjustments. There's a slight bit of storage behind as well for a couple other small bags, and of course the fire extinguisher there. In the center console, we've got the start-stop button underneath this red cover here. The transmission control, so reverse, park, manual mode, and of course the electric park brake. You get the screen for the infotainment, and a bunch of switches here for the windows, turn on the front fog lamps, they turn off the electronic stability control, and the auto stop start off. And then on the steering wheel, behind the steering wheel here, you got a couple of large paddles for shifting, for when you're going forwards, and then also switches here to go between the displays, and of course the drive modes here: Strada for street, sport, and rally, and we'll get into that in a little bit. Because of the shift paddles here, there's no traditional turn signal stocks, but you do have a switch here on the steering wheel. That's what you use for turn signals, and on the other side here for the windshield wipers and the washer. All right, so let's go for a ride in the Huracan Sterrato. Because there's no drive button here, it's just park, reverse, and manual for down here on the console. To put it in gear, just put your foot on the brake, pull back on the the right shift paddle, and that puts it into first gear. And leave it in Strada mode for the moment, because the exhaust is a little bit quieter so you can hear me, but in a minute I will put it into sport mode as we get onto the road here. Alright, sport mode, that V10 gets quite a bit louder, and it is a glorious sound. That is absolutely a sound that I'm going to miss when we go to all electric vehicles, because even with synthesized sound like some EVs have, like the Hyundai Ioniq 5N that I recently drove, there's nothing quite like the authentic sound of a great internal combustion engine. And I understand why we need to go electric, and I agree with it, but I will definitely miss this in time. Although I'm old enough that, at least in my lifetime, I'll probably still be able to enjoy stuff like this. Heading in the opposite direction there. Strada mode so I can talk. So one of the I would say probably an advantage of the Sterrato versus a standard Huracan, if you're actually going to use it as a daily driver, yes, it looks a little more out there, a little more ostentatious with the big black fender flares, the lift, and everything else, and particularly the orange color of this car. It's an interesting it's a different kind of experience driving this from a typical sports car of this type, because with that lift you've got a little more wheel travel. Those tires, those all-terrain tires, yeah, you're not going to have the ultimate grip that you would have driving you know, with the performance tires, the summer performance tires that you would have on a regular Huracan. But on the other hand, those taller tires give you a lot more wheel compliance, a lot more compliance in the rubber from the sidewalls. And driving in Michigan here, that's actually a good thing. I actually like having that little bit of extra compliance. It's a lot more comfortable to drive than a typical Lamborghini or, you know, any other sports car of this type. It makes it a lot easier if you want to use it as a daily driver. How many people are going to pay $278,000 to start for a car are going to use it as a daily driver? It's debatable, but you know, it's an easy car. I think it would be an easy car to take for a weekend getaway with your partner. You've got, you know, a little bit of luggage space in the front, a little bit of storage space right behind the seats, and it's not too hard on your body driving this thing. You know, this is not, if you want to go to the track, the Sterrato is not the Huracan to have. This is really more the daily driver Huracan that you could actually drive year round. I mean, with 6.7 inches of ground clearance, it's not huge, but it's way better than a typical car of this type. And with these tires, you're actually going to get some reasonable grip in snow and ice. So I think that this is a car I could probably live with, assuming, you know, I had kind of crazy money, which I don't. So I will probably never get a chance to live with a car like this. Be able to tell from the video view, you know, the road, these roads here, these are some of the best driving roads around here, but they're pretty uneven. You know, the car's kind of moving around a little bit, but it's still very comfortable to drive, very easy to drive. The 7-speed DCT, when you tap those paddles, shifts are almost instantaneous. Approach that 8,500 RPM red line, the sound is just amazing. Slightly slower than we are. So I mentioned the Ioniq 5N a few minutes ago, and compared to this car, it costs about less than a quarter as much. You could buy about 4.5 Ioniq 5Ns for the cost of one of these. And the 5N, unlike other Hyundai EVs, and frankly most EVs, you know, it's the performance version of the Ioniq 5. And one of the things that Hyundai, the N team and Hyundai did with that car, is they added simulated shifting and 4-cylinder engine. And then the paddles that in normal driving on the 5N you would use to control the amount of regenerative braking you get become simulated shifters. There's only a single speed gearbox in the 5N, as you find in most EVs, but they use software to interrupt the torque flow momentarily when you tap the paddles, and there's a simulated tachometer that is not really connected to anything you're doing. And it's fun. It is a much more engaging drive than a typical EV. But compared to this, it doesn't have the authenticity of a car like this. It's everything that you're hearing, everything you're feeling is an authentic mechanical feeling. And you can't, as hard as you might try, you can get close, but it's not the same. And so this is one of the things, as I said, that I will miss. My personal car, I have a 35-year-old Mazda Miata. It's nowhere near as fast as this, but it has the same kind of engaging feel that you would get from a car like this, simply because it's a manual transmission. You can hear the engine, you can feel it, you can feel everything that's happening, and you get multi-sensory feedback from a car like this. And that's what Hyundai was trying to emulate in the Ioniq 5N, is that multi-sensory feedback that you get when you're driving. And I've driven the 5N on a track in Road America, and it's amazing how close they get. And I wouldn't call it an uncanny valley, because it does give you the kind of feedback that you want when you're driving quickly. But it's still not quite the same. So almost an uncanny valley. There is no uncanny valley with this car. There's Mustangs again, going for another lap around. And a whole bunch of different ones, S197s to the latest S550 GT500s. I didn't see any brand new S650s. So, at any rate, I really enjoy driving this car. Yeah, the price is insane, nearly $300,000. I'll almost certainly never own anything like this, but I'm really glad to have had the chance to experience this. And if you do have the resources, this is a really interesting take on the idea of an Italian supercar. The last time I drove a Lamborghini was almost 25 years ago. I drove a Diablo when I was still working as an engineer, and we were doing development work for an ABS system for that car back in the late 1990s. And this was in northern Sweden, driving it on a frozen lake. That one was not lifted like this, but it did have winter tires on it. It also had a 6-speed gated manual shifter. I do miss that. That's one element that's missing from a car like this. Even despite all the authenticity you get in terms of the sound, the suspension feel, the shifting in this car, missing that third pedal and the manual shifter, that does take away a little bit. But unfortunately, that's the reality of the age we live in. Almost no one makes cars like that with a manual gearbox anymore. Gordon Murray is probably one of the last with the cars that he's building, the T50 and the T33 sports cars. The T50 is his next generation take on the McLaren F1 that he designed back in the 1990s, the early 90s. And the T33 is a slightly lower performance version of that. Those cars are all very analog. This is about as close as you're going to get to that analog feeling in 2024 with a car of this performance level. There are still some cars with manual transmissions. Ford, Jim Farley recently said that Ford will build Mustangs with manual transmissions for as long as they're allowed to, and that's great. I love that. Hopefully Mazda will continue to build future generations of the Miata with manual transmissions. But these are niche products. They're not mainstream. And this is a tiny niche of a niche of a niche. In 2022, Lamborghini announced that they had just produced the 20,000th Huracan. They've probably built another maybe 3,000 since then. So probably fewer than 25,000 in an 11-year production run of this car. And this is, this is the kind of car that will be missed in the future. Hopefully, owners of insanely expensive cars like this won't just park them in a climate-controlled warehouse or garage, but they will actually drive them, because this is a car that deserves to be driven. It's what it was built for. It was designed to be driven. It wasn't designed to be a museum piece. Some will be museum pieces, but hopefully most of them will be racking up miles for decades to come. That sound of a V10 engine, big internal combustion, lots of power. It's just not the same getting it from a set of speakers inside your cabin. All right, well, this is the Lamborghini Huracan Sterrato. It's the end of the line for the Huracan. Hopefully I'll get a chance to drive the Temerario at some point, the successor to this. The Temerario will almost certainly be much faster than this car. It loses the V10, the naturally aspirated V10. It's getting a twin turbocharged V8 engine and a hybrid system. So instead of 602 horsepower, it will have over 900 horsepower. So half again as much power. Certainly that hybrid system will help with low-end torque, getting it off the line. It'll probably have all-wheel drive like this one does. But again, it'll be even slightly less authentic than this, because you've got that electrification component in there. But it's what's needed in order to keep performance cars available in the 21st century, because we can't afford to keep doing what we're doing with cars like this. The fuel that they consume, the emissions that they produce, it's something that is not sustainable. There's not very many of these cars. The overall environmental impact is pretty small, but that is the direction we need to go. And like I said, things have to change. They will change, but I'm glad that these had a chance to exist, for at least for a time.